Hello! So, in this video, I am doing a playthrough of Risk of Rain 2 Rex on Monsoon and with the command Artefact enabled. The loadout that I like to run with Rex is focused primarily on sustainable damage per second. Not really much else to say until we get into the run, because I do have a strategy dealing beating the game. Obviously doing post-commentary, but not doing live. Don't worry, there will be a live reaction to the end of the video. So, the first item is a green item, and the only green item I want is Harvester's Scythes, because then critical strikes will heal me, and that becomes later once I can build my crit chance up to 100% per strike. There are other green items which can in fact be useful, but for the time being, I just want critical strikes healing me. And for reasons that are spoilers, yeah. The standard affair with Rex is to use Directive Inject, the primary attack, to weaken enemies, and then Seed Barrage, in combination with animation cancelling, do my damage per second. And when I can get the opportunity to do so, I end up usually jumping and using my Directive Disperse. I refer to this as Disperse jumping, and it's, for me, similar to rocket jumping in that there is skill ceiling to it. And the R ability, the support ability for Rex, is Tangling Growth, which can isolate enemies. I'm getting armor piercing rounds because additional damage to bosses is vital. Fool's Go Tool also helps me just maneuver around the map faster, and can stack with Directive Disperse in a lot of cases. Like, a huge part of this is also grinding for money and experience, and there's quite a lot around in terms of this particular first stage. This is actually one of the luckier first stages. Jade Elephant will basically make me invulnerable for a brief period of time, and it's only 5 seconds, but that 5 seconds can make a huge difference, especially later on. And of course, I've also got to keep an eye out for the teleporter, because difficulty increases as time goes on. That's standard Risk of Rain mechanic. It's actually kind of vital that I get to the teleport and trigger it as well, but it's also vital that I get as many items as possible. But it's not just about quantity of items, it's the quality of the items and how good they are for the particular build I'm going. I do think I can beat a game about this particular build that I'm going for, and in a trial run I almost did. But then I messed up. It's like end of that, and I'll probably do that again at some point. And yeah, the usual thoroughfare still applies here. The early items I'm grabbing are Harvester's Scythes, AP rounds, and Go-To. And of course, making sure that I grab as many chests as possible, because I don't really want to hang around after the teleport event is done. Any yellow items you can get from bosses, like, there are some good ones you can grab for this kind of run. And basically with my DPS strategy, I can effectively nuke this Wandering Vagrant without too many issues with animation cancelled, Seed Barrages, and Directive Injects over and over again. Getting a green item here is manageable, but I don't have any use of green items outside of Harvester's Scythes for healing on crits. Getting more Harvester's Scythes doesn't increase your crit chance, unlike the first one, which raises it by 5%. first Harvester's scythe you get will have critical hits heal you for 8 health, and then each one after the fact will just heal you for 4 health. I forget how exactly AP rounds work. I believe the first one gives you 20%. I'm not sure how it stacks after that. And Paul's go-to increases mobility by... increases your move speed actually by 17%. Plus 17% per stack, so... And being able to increase your movement speed is vital for in-moment mobilities like this just now. I don't know what I was doing here, I'll be honest. I guess using the vulnerability of the Jade Elephant in combination with Tangling Growth to lure enemies into it would have worked better if I had planned that better. But yeah, Abandoned Aqueduct is a welcome sight. I find it a lot easier to navigate than Wetland Aspect. Wetland Aspect is time sink for me if I end up going there instead of the Abandoned Aqueduct. And here I do something cheeky and I thought I'd fling... Where did that go? Yeah, that was my live reaction during the recording. Because I didn't think that using Directive Disperse on that would necessarily do that to oil pots around the map. And naturally, my curiosity gets the better of me. Oh wait, will it happen again with... What? So, yeah, that was interesting. I assume that it's because those oil pots have no mass in hindsight, and that would make sense if they just instantly clip through the landscape from a point-blank disperse. Yeah, it's not really much different at this point, the item lineup, but I do diversify quite a bit. This is actually the point where I was thinking maybe I should get a repulsion armor plate instead. My usual, but I actually went for Lensmaker's class, which each of those gives a 10% chance to critical hit. It's 10% per stack. So if I got 10 of them, then it's guaranteed critical hits every time I hit an enemy. It is guaranteed healing every time I hit an enemy. Would be with the Harvester's Dive combo. And here I just sort of noticed these two crates, one of which is basically guaranteed green item, but I get a red, which is only a 20% chance, and opt for the alien head, which decreases the cooldown of all my skills by 25%. That's hugely vital because Tangling Growth's cooldown is 12 seconds, and the Tangling Growth itself is only around for 10 seconds. So with alien head, it's now 9 seconds between each Tangling Growth. Which means that I could keep an enemy locked down forever if I really wanted to. This kind of becomes vital for later. And another green, another harvest stuff. Yeah, the only greens I'm picking up are harvesters. Maybe fuel cells, but I don't think... Doing this post-commentary, I don't think I grab any fuel cells. Then again, I am recording the post-commentary like a couple of days after I've actually done this run. So my memory is a little hazy, but I do remember the strategy I had. I remember being a little frustrated here, not having enough money for the crate and having only these beetle guards to farm off of money. And then these wisps. These wisps are annoying. And here I'm also looking around for the news altar for another part of the strategy to get myself some more items. I mean, technically armor piercing rounds contributes to healing, but I really should have picked up something like, oh, I don't know, maybe a cautious slug if I wanted to be thematically consistent. Anyway, I didn't find a new altar that was convenient, so I triggered the teleporter here and proceeded to nuke the Clay Dunestrider to death, which is a boss that is substantially more difficult for me to deal with consistently. But here I get lucky and spotted that I did get a yellow item, and there is only one yellow item that I can think of that would have been good for the build at the time. I mean, there are others that could be useful, but any item directly benefits me. That's in the spoiler territory. Maybe I really shouldn't have said anything in post commentary. Yes, the yellow item that I have in mind is one that normally drops off the Beetle Queen if you happen to be fighting it on this stage. Queen's Gland will give me a Beetle Guard that can respawn on its own every 30 or so seconds. So the idea is that I now have a permanent minion around to act as my field. And that's awesome and preferable. Titanic Knurl, a different yellow item, have been used for increasing my health pool. But then that also means that the increased health pool doesn't really scale well with the regeneration you're given, plus it also subtly increases the cost for me to use Angling Growth and Seed Barrage. They take a percentage of my health, of my current health, when I use them. The Seed Barrage only had like a 1 second cooldown intrinsically, and that means that every second I'm draining like 15% of my current health. And yeah, that's the reason why. I did pick up a Tougher Times earlier. That gives... It says a 15% chance to negate incoming damage. The reality is that due to maths behind the Tougher Times, it's more like 12% for just one of those. But still, it's like a 12% chance every second or so to not take damage from Seed Barrage. I donate to a new altar there to get the blue gear. This is part of the strategy. It's not required, but it is... It is helpful to be able to have that be a part of the strategy, and I apologize for the bitrate of the video here, but I know it sort of pixelates a little. And whilst the red filter when I'm low on health also does not help. Yeah, I'm just sort of, at this point, duking other Beetle Guards, not my own, for money, so that I can get more, oh, in my case, armor-piercing rounds, damage versus bosses, and other things. Ideally, you want to be sort of finding chests and grabbing them as you go. Like, you want to try and minimize the amount of backtracking episodes like this, levels like this. And that right there is a Clay Templar, sort of wielding a minigun and just sort of pecking away at my health. So at this point, I was starting to think I should grab some propulsion armor plates, because those give me a flat damage reduction and thus mitigate any damage over time I might suffer, and the amount of damage I get from the Clay Templar. It also does sort of help reducing the health cost for things, but I end up going for armor-piercing rounds. You could sort of start to see how crits give me health. It's not at the minute a consistent source of health, but I can depend on. That will change as I get more Lensmaker's glasses. Yeah, they sort of mid-air poor wisp right there with Angling Growth. Sorry, not sorry. Thing. Then again, these hostile mobs are spawning and just sort of wanting to kill me. And here I spot chests off in the background and post-editing and then in the game. So I end up doing a rather sneaky... I did a rather sneaky little trick here where I thought I could get across in one leap but didn't quite. But thankfully I was close enough to the other side that I was just sort of able to teleport up onto the ledge where I wanted to be. Yes, tougher times can trigger off of the Shrines of Health. And yes, those Shrines of Health will give you gold even if health is not lost. So thank you, Tougher Times, for basically being awesome. For Angling Growth there would give me a bit more health than what it was, but every little bit counts. There's actually quite a number of chests around here as well, but I'm just grabbing armor-piercing rounds because... And here I thought I was going to end up in danger from a lot more enemies, so I activated Jade Elephant to try and mitigate the threat, and that was kind of pointless. I think green items. It's not that green items can't be used, just they have different uses for me, and like in my case, it's just more healing. And at this point I end up triggering the teleport, and all in the whole it's our old buddy Clay Dunestrider, and here I was trying to just knock this one off the edge of the platform to instantly kill it, and that one, it worked for that one, goodbye. And I tried to do the same on the other one, but it just doesn't quite work, it just doesn't cooperate with me and my directive disperse. So I'm using Tangling Growth to try and crowd control the backline whilst I'm trying to desperately use directive disperse to instantly kill the Clay Dunestrider, and it's just not cooperating. I try again, and again it just doesn't cooperate with me. I try it once more here and it kind of worked, but then he got stuck. It just wouldn't move any further. And so I basically just wait in and give it another shot, and then I decide here to just take care of it myself. My Beetle Guard is going to die, I think. If it's anywhere near here. And so I just proceed to let the Clay Dunestrider take care of most of the riffraff for me with its healing attack. Which gives me plenty of things that I can then heal off of Angling Growth. And I then proceed to nuke it. It wasted a bit of my time, but manageable. I can make up for lost time later. I end up disperse jumping up here to grab another green item. It was, I think that was a leeching seed in there, which would have been a guaranteed health back on every attack, but really wouldn't have amounted to much healing. Like only 1 point of healing every time I did that damage, and I'm not going to be returning on that investment anytime soon, was my thought process behind grabbing a harvester's knife instead. And I get a little frustrated with... Shrine of Chance only giving me one reward out of 4 attempts, and seeking out another Shrine of Chance would have been viable, but then you have to weigh in whether or not you're going to be getting your time back, and I thought I wasn't going to be getting my time back, so I just sort of left. So the Hidden Realm Bazaar between time stands still here, and that's useful to me. I end up going here, and I give up 5 of my Harvester's Knives for Rejuvenation Pack to double the strength of my healing. It actually increases the healing you receive by 100%. And being able to double the healing means that I can more easily recover my health when a situation is unfavorable. Falling damage is not lethal unless you've got the artifact enabled for lethal fall damage. And yeah, the Void Field, the Cosmic Prison. Time is also at a standstill here. It gives me a chance to grind for, well, levels, money, which then becomes experience. And it also gives me a bit of breathing room too, because it can also give me items, and it gives me a chance to also practice my animation cancelling trick with Rex. And it's 9 cells of basically this, and having the mini mushrooms come up first is unfavorable because they can just shoot this ball of acid at you. Or is it mushroom spores? I can never tell. I always considered it to be acid because it looked like acid to me whilst I was playing. Plus, it's a bit colloquially faster to say, and fortunately the item lands in the acid pool here, so I'm taking damage just from trying to grab Bustling Fungus. Bustling Fungus is amazing in the Void Fields. I'd argue it's necessary in some cases, because being able to just stand still for 2 seconds, and you get plenty of time in the Void Fields, you can just take your time. I'm in no rush. Time is at a standstill here. Backup magazine doesn't really benefit the monsters any, but it doesn't really benefit Rex at all. Not with this build. Not with this loadout, rather. So the backup magazine's a bit of a lucky break. It could have been something far worse, like repulsion armor plates, which would have granted the monsters 25 flat damage reduction after all the damage calculations. Which could well mean that Directive Inject goes from being able to do damage to not really being able to do damage. And none of the mini mushrooms are coming out necessarily to play here, so this ends up being one of the easiest cell vents in all of history. And I have a bit of a thought here that maybe I want to go for, yep, Repulsion Armor Plate. So it gives me 5 points of flat damage reduction from all attacks, but also from environmental effects and from my own speed barrages. It's 5 points of flat damage reduction each time you grab a Repulsion Armor Plate. And it applies to just about everything too, including damage over time from the acid. Which incidentally also slows down your attack speed whilst you're standing in it, so it's really inadvisable to be standing in it. And here I think I'm about to die because the Elven Ligurians have also joined the fray, and they can hit quite hard. They have a large health pool, and they're easy to crowd control with Tangling Growth. I end up mopping up the enemies very nicely here, and it ends up turning into a bit of a frenzy. Also, the music here is... I like it. It perfectly conveys, in my mind, the sort of alien environment behind the void fields. I get another armor plate here. This is, I think, the last armor plate I end up getting. And there you go, a perfect dispersed jump up onto the cliff. Not that it was strictly necessary, considering where the hell vent was. And medkits are not necessarily the best. It means that any enemy I engage, I have to kill, because if I don't, they get 40% of their health back if I leave them alone for 2 seconds. Because the first medkit gives them 20% of their health back after 2 seconds, and each one thereafter gives another 5%. So, what that means is that if an enemy has something like... If an enemy has, I think it's 17 medkits, they'll get all their health back in an instant. Which is a good and that sounds pretty cool, being able to just get all your health back, spending 2 seconds out of combat, effectively. But I'm not doing that. Get one more armor piercing rounds here, because I'm not going to be able to use it here in the void field. Navigating the void field, typically you have to spot these beams of light that come out of the active cell vent. Here I get clay Templars, and I'm thinking, oh joy. But then I remember that I have my 2 repulsion armor plates, which is 10%. Just 10 points of flat damage reduction after all damage calculations, and I can just sort of now face tank the Clay Templars. A problem with the Clay Templars is that they're everywhere at this point, I think, and so is this Elder Lemurian. I can totally use Directive Disperse to launch enemies off of the map, and also launch myself also off the map if I'm not careful. And just because I'm nigh invincible to Clay Templar, I still hear the minigun winding up and I still think I'm in for trouble. And I'm technically not wrong. But then at long last, this cell vent is over and I start getting more Harvester's lives again. Because completing the void fields, my thinking was that I could use that as the guaranteed legendary item that you get once you complete the void field trials. I had a particular item in mind for that, and the enemies getting Old War stealth kits, that doesn't mess me up so much because I can just simply hit enemies with weaken. And then I can get that glowing effect around them, and I can see you. I see you, we all see you. Sort of a deal. But them having the Old War stealth kits makes the Beetle Guard, well, less effective because it no longer sees the enemies as being there. That's a problem because the Old War Stealth Kit can proc off of heavy damage much more easily than light damage. Or rather, light amounts of damage. You understand what I mean. And another green, another Harvester's Scythe, more healing on crits, and I'm looking around for the Beam of Light, not seeing it, so I do a first jump up to the cliff and then see it and navigate over to it. Being able to disperse jump is arguably my favorite feature about Rex. I can just sort of disperse jump myself to where I need to go. And here comes the most annoying enemy to fight in the void fields, the Soulless Probes. Because, in my mind, they're much worse than the Stone Golems. What's worse than having a 9 hit scan attack? How about having a 9 hit scan attack that basically tracks you and can hit you at all times? And that's what the Soulless Probe is. And they're also a flying enemy. So they may in fact be susceptible to me using Disperse on them to shove them into a cliff or something, but I digress. The beam attack is annoying, though it doesn't do all that much damage, but in combination with the other enemies around, the Old War Stealth Kit, it becomes a chore fighting Soulless Probes, but at the same time, that's luck of the draw, and I can't really change that. I'm really just thankful that they didn't end up getting something like Leeching Seeds or Lensmaker's Glasses, because then they could have really wrecked me. So, this Sylvans, I do end up taking my own advice and waiting a little bit. Predatory Instincts. The way that item works is you get a crit, you then get a... On crit, you get a buff that improves your attack speed and attack multiple times. It also confers 5% crit chance, but more stacks of Predatory Instincts only increases how far the attack speed buff can go, not how much damage critical hits do, or increases how the chance of getting the crits. So this is kind of a welcome relief. Considering that the item pool also contains things like Renault's Band, Kagaro's Band, ATG missiles. Yeah, there is a consistent idea to this build that I'm avoiding things that do on-hit effects. I mean, outside of increasing damage and critical strikes. And that's important later, and I'm sort of getting nailed in the back by a Clay Templar, which then disappeared due to the silver vent being over. I'm back up to 7 Harvester's Size now. But I end up going to this Sylvant, healing, and oh dear no. In Kahuna's opinion allows enemies to basically store up their Solvent. Yeah, but to explain what you just saw, in Kahuna's opinion also stores up healing in a secondary pool referred to as soul energy internally, and when that hits a certain percent, like I think it's like 10%, the fire homing skull that deals 250% of the health you receive back as damage to anything nearby. Well, nearby the skull when it makes contact with the enemy, so it becomes even more vital now to basically try to kill enemies fast and to not leave them alone, because they can just get like 40% of their health back, and that equals a lot of damage against either me or my Beetle Guard. This in combination with the Old War Stealth Kit could have been a real problem, but it didn't turn out to be. So here I get the Hardlight Afterburner, which allows me to get 2 additional stacks of reserve charges for Directive Disperse, as well as reducing the cooldown rate by 33%. That 33% cooldown rate does also stack with tangling the alien head. I can now literally just disperse jump myself to the other side of the map if I need to get away from enemy. And that right there is a great list which I'm engaging at a distance so as to avoid it and get money. Siren's Call, I actually like the aesthetics behind Siren's Call. Not to mention that the music here is fantastic. But yeah, I really need money, and oh dear lord, it's a magma lord. I don't have an item build to deal with general enemies. I have an item build to deal with bosses very quickly. And the implication behind what I'm saying here is that if I'm dealing with a boss enemy that's shown up as a normal enemy, I don't get my insane damage boost against them. And that's why this magma worm is basically taking 3.5 forevers to take down. On the flip side, taking it down will give me a lot of money, but surviving is kind of a higher priority than money. I make quick work of the regular mooks and get another armor-piercing round. The whole idea behind my build, behind this particular build that I'm going for, is just pure damage. So no real on-hit effects. I can create my own on-hit effects with weaken. And there the magma worm basically runs out of health and proceeds to turn into ash as it goes off the map. Huh. An interesting thing to have seen. Quick disperse jump up here to grab more items. I keep grabbing armor piercing rounds. Why not? And breaking, I think it's like 5 sets of those eggs on this map summons the alloy worship unit. Here I just sort of eat that flaming beetle off the edge of the map and try to do the same to that one. That one actually survived. And here I just sort of get... What? The heck was that game? So, yeah, the game kind of did that, and I'm not sure why it did that in hindsight. I was able to see through the terrain for like half a second. And here I end up just dispersing that jellyfish into a wall to instantly kill it, and do the same to that one. So you can also do this to wisps, but there are no wisps on this map. So I end up getting another go-to here for faster movement, so that way I can just peel and run if the situation looks bad enough. And you know, that's a lot of enemies. That situation's not as bad as it could be, though. You could be playing with the Artefact of Swarms if I really wanted it to be bad. And the Artefact of Swarms is... I don't mind it so much, but fighting double the enemies with Rex is a little bit broke, because how Angling Growth gives you health back for each enemy that it hits. To double the enemies means double the effective health. Ideally from this I end up grabbing another green item and harvested scythe. Yeah, I'm not getting any other green items, am I? Run. So I got like a tiny bit of health overall from that egg. And I note the teleporter that's right there for later. Being able to disperse enemies away at the last second is kind of a good skill. And there I take basically half my damage from a single... Half of my health is damaged from a single hit by an electric enemy. It was a shocking alloy launcher, if I recall correctly. There ended up dispersing several alloy vultures off the edge of the cliff, but since they can fly, they're probably not dead, and I end up sort of running around. I'm looking for more eggs to smash and more chests to open for items. Here's another harvester scythe, 2 harvester scythes at that, so that's like, I'm sort of like thinking, it's fine, I'll just sort of hang around here and maybe grind a little bit, get some enemies to spawn. Then I notice this beetle, it drags my attention because I wanted to disperse it off into a little ravine there. Then this here is a shocking alloy vulture, and then I notice I'm in a bit of a pickle. That's a lot more enemies than I bargained for, game. Hey, do you mind toning it down a little? I ended up almost sending myself down the same ravine that I sent that beetle guard down earlier, and here I end up not using Bad Elephant to give myself virtual invulnerability for that. So I decide I need my health back. Good thing about smashing eggs, you get all your health back if you do so. There I kind of show off what's the power of having a hardlight afterburner with directive disperse is like. So at this point I'm basically ready to take on the alloy workup unit, and I'm just sort of searching around for eggs to smash, and I find a pair right here that I end up going after. You hear a distant whirring is the message you get before the egg that's smashed for the alloy worship unit to spawn. The whirring grows loudest when it actually spawns. And has, for this point in the game, 70,000, but as you can see, I'm just sort of able to burst through that very quickly with my little animation cancel DPS trick for Rex. The alloy worship unit has its own surprise. When it drops to half health, when it does that big area of effect damage, it also gains a shield buff that gives it an additional 50% health. Actually, no, I'm wrong. It's an additional 100% health as shields, but that disappears once the attack is over. So when it buffs up its health like that, that's when you typically run if you're playing another character that can't just eat myself places. Destroying the alloy worship unit would unlock you the loader if you haven't already unlocked it, but it gives you a guaranteed legendary, and I end up going for another rejuvenation pack. So now I get back 300% of all healing health. At this point I'm also looking around for a newt altar, and I don't end up finding one. Then I'm like, but look at the time. That clock is running down. I don't have that much time to spare. So if you don't get a newt altar before you hit the teleporter, you can't go to Newt's shop in the bazaar between time. At this point, I'm almost thankful that it's wandering vagrants and not another magmore. So I sort of awkwardly directive disperse myself, jump myself into an awkward position, and then have to get out of that. And sometimes you can fool yourself into thinking that you've jumped when you haven't actually been directive disperse. That's kind of why it's good to be aware of the situation that you're facing and where you are exactly before using disperse if you're intent on using disperse jumping. Another half of the scythe is kind of welcome, but I kind of really wanted a second Queen's Gland. Not that it would have changed things. A run later. But yeah, it's a lot of enemies, which large amounts of enemies are perfect for directive disperse, and I even get lucky here and have a couple of loot drop off of enemies. And here I just sort of go to town on the group of enemies that have been hounding me the whole time that I've been here. And it's kind of nice, kind of cathartic to just be able to nuke enemies like this. It can't last forever, and I also have to weigh in the time that I have left. So I sort of disperse jump myself sort of to safety. It worked in a roundabout way. Sky Meadows. Sky Meadow was a level in the original Risk of Rain, and it's really nice to see it be brought into 3D like this. This is another one of my favourite stages because of the aesthetics behind it. You've noticed a message in the lower left sort of chat area that said that the primordial teleporter lines up with the moon. By default, will line up with the moon, because the moon is where the final boss of the game is located. So you have to go to the planet's moon to fight the final boss. And that's actually rather cool, and I like that concept a lot, because it ties in with... It sort of ties in with the theme of the game. It's actually really fine. I end up opting on this stage to max out my crit chance. It involves me getting a lot of items and generally being harassed by these enemies that won't leave me alone, which... And it's fine for them to not leave me alone since they are enemies and I'm sort of here wrecking everything. Here I thought I'd get both those shocking wisps in the same seed barrage. That ultimately doesn't end up working out. But what ends up working out is I end up getting lucky and having the shocking elite drop its equip item, Silence Between Two Strikes, which it would essentially give me an additional 50% damage and convert half of my health into shields. But as Rex, you want to be focusing on prioritizing having your health at all times and minimizing the amount of shields you do. So sadly, we have to say goodbye to the Silence Between Two Strikes, and it really would have been cool on a different character. If it was like Engineer or Commando, it would have absolutely changed my strategy at this point. Not in a major way, but yeah. And so I do get another Harvester Scythe here. I'm trying to get Lensmaker Glass's crits game. Being able to guarantee my health back on every attack, absolutely insane. Is actually insane. And sometimes when I'm playing as Rex, I do question whether or not it's worth it to fight things properly, or if I should just deal with them quickly with Disperse. And if you were looking at the video footage just now, you may have noticed out the cool video footage that the Primordial teleport there. And I get distracted. I sort of get distracted by everything that's happening around me, including this Magma Worm, that blazing Greater Wisp. And then there's this shocking brass contraption, and I hate brass contraption. It's nothing personal except when it is. But they do a lot of damage if they hit you. I just do not like brass contraptions. That said, they are a cool enemy, and I do like them on a conceptual level, but they always are my preferred enemy if I'm in a firefight. Aside from, say, anything with hit scan capability like a Wisp or a Solus Probe, which the Solus Probes don't naturally spawn on their own. In any case, so it's fine usually. I'm just sort of looking around for any chest I can at this point to try and get my crit build up. I only need one more Lensmaker Glasses at this point, and then I have guaranteed crits on all of my attacks, which means guaranteed health on all of my attacks, which is awesome and helpful for any sort of long-term sustainability. And there I missed with a Tangling Growth. That would have been awesome if it had actually hit anything. Alas, it didn't. I'm just sort of forced to resort to my conventional tactic of just nuke things from orbit with Seed Barrage. Here I just sort of yeet the parent off the cliff of Directive Disperse, and I get another Harvester Scythe. You know the deal at this point, I don't need to explain it again. I apologize if my commentary is annoying anyone. I am trying to do the post-commentary in one sitting as well, which I don't think is always the best idea considering my limited experience with post-commentary. I would much rather have been able to do this live, but talking live for an hour and 15 minutes, especially when this is like the 5th time I've attempted this particular run, I don't see myself doing anything other than just holding a gamer face and just trying to keep my commentary to an absolute minimum when I'm life playing a game with the amount of focus that I had. And then I successfully give a mini mushroom a lesson in flying. And then I have to deal with this magma somehow. That's not exactly ideal situation that I'm in, because I'm now being set on fire. So I use my Jade Elephant to try and mitigate the damage, grab another armor-piercing round. And then I notice the primordial teleporter here, and I activate it. If you want to shift the destination, you have to target the sort of outer rings. Then I notice that I'm up against blazing greater wisps, and this could have been run over by this point, because it's a horde of blazing greater wisps. They do thankfully count as bosses, so armor-piercing rounds would just simply do a lot of damage to ones which are actual bosses. But then I'm reminded that there was a regular blazing greater wisp that wasn't a boss, and that kind of changes the situation a little. But there I'm just sort of able to nuke at least one blazing greater wisp, maybe I caught a second one in the crossfire. I actually did, incidentally. That wasn't really intentional, and there's another harvester scythe there for me to grab in a few moments once I'm done with this. So there I do manage to actually hit a greater wisp mid-air with Tangling Growth. Not that Tangling Growth can do a lot of damage, but the whole point of Tangling Growth... The point of Tangling Growth isn't damage, it's being able to just crowd control at this point. And I get hit here by a flying rock. Astronomically low odds all around here, and it's being able to heal off of crits and also get the healing from the last syringe of Directive Inject, the primary attack. That was what turned that situation just now around in entirety. And I just sort of get hit by another meat rock there and sent off the map, but I was able to Directive Disperse myself back up to the map and save myself some fall damage, which could have resulted in me dying. How many problems does Hardline Afterburner solve on Rex? How about all of them? And it's not that I can't do live commentary, it's that I do it sort of sparingly throughout this entire recording session. It is what it is at the end of the day, and what it was not the most ideal of circumstances. I end up noticing that that blazing greater wisp isn't a boss, so I end up searching around and find... Aha! Here you are! But I still have to charge up the teleporter because it's still only at 87% here. I do think it'll charge up slightly faster now that the boss is dead. I end up using the Jade Elephant here to just grab this Harvester's Scythe. Then I send that mini mushroom off the cliff edge. And I just need to get the enemies away from the teleporter ideally so that I can grab the items and leave in peace. Because I'm running out of time. We're about 40 minutes run and well into the ha 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 difficulty setting, which is just... I get hit by another rock. They're just rocks. They're just flying rocks through the area and I keep getting hit by them. So anyway, I get to hear a little cheeky strategy, just use the Jade Elephant, hit the teleporter, and then Directive Disperse myself into the stratosphere. And that, it worked better that time than it did in Siren's Call. Here we are, commencement, the last stage of the game. And I end up going up the stairs, the ramp very quickly with my free dispersers. And you may have noticed that my Beetle Guard isn't following me. At the time I didn't think I thought my Beetle Guard would be following me and that it was just taking its time to catch up. And then I turned back and realized that's still at the teleporter. So I'm going back to investigate what's going on here. The Beetle Guard's supposed to be with me the whole time, right? It's literally meant to be my shield in this situation and madness that is the last stage. I dispersed, jump myself into the ground and take a huge amount of damage. And thought at first the issue was that the Beetle Guard was just simply stuck in the primordial teleporter, but then I noticed it running back to the primordial teleporter and being obsessed with it. So then I realized that I'd have to leave it behind and just hope that maybe some of the enemies will eventually wander in here and kill the Beetle Guard so that it can respawn by me and properly navigate. I also had a bit of a thought that maybe I could aid this process a little bit by luring some of the enemies to where the Beetle Guard was. This, like, kinda didn't work. And whilst I was here, I kind of thought, well, I may as well take on at least some of the enemies to figure out just how much health they had, and it turns out to be a ridiculous amount. And so I'm also thinking, because I didn't get the commencement environment log, that it might be up there, ceiling. And so I suppose jump up there to take a look around, and I don't notice anything out of the ordinary. There's no environment log up here. And I think that would have been an evil place to... It would have absolutely been an evil place, but maybe it could have spawned up there, like, maybe the... Yeah, I still don't know what the commencement environmental log is. I think I will have to find it someday, but I don't know where it is for now. So anyway, these enemies are called Lunar Chimeras. Although these are the Lunar Chimera golems, and they bear a resemblance to the Temple Guards of the first game. Except I prefer the look of the Temple Guards from the first game, and I'll be honest, these ones are just... The golems are nowhere near as threatening. The real threat are the Lunar Chimera Wisps, the flying ones with miniguns. Just have to hope that something kills the Beetle Guard so everyone else are in the stage for me. And so this right here sort of becomes the reason why I wanted the Hardlight Afterburner for additional dispersed jump uses. And they sort of end up getting nailed here a little bit by a Lunar Chimera Wisp. Both of these enemies do have their own monster logs that they can drop, but the stage is littered with both golems and wisps. And I sort of ignore them. My justification at the time, back on my sort of half-live commentary reaction, was that I didn't think I'd be leveling up off of killing the enemies here in the map. So farewell. Here I just sort of mess around with dispersed jumping a little, try and get myself familiar with timings, I think. And I end up going over here to sort of bootleg Bizarre Between Time item exchange. It's sort of like a last place. The other side of the map relative to this has a place where you can pick up lunar items. And I get another Hardlight Afterburner here because then I can get as many as 5 dispersed jumps, and I thought briefly about picking up another Harvester's Scythe there, but I end up deciding against it. Because I have 11 of them. That's still a lot of healing off of critical hits, and I've got the 2 rejuvenation packs that triple the amount of healing I get. And here I get skirmish with the Chimera Wisp, and I reminded just how much I hate dealing with enemies that can hit scan you. And there I got sort of nailed by a golem off to the side that I didn't even notice earlier. And so I ended up going into the launch pad just to get away from it, and now I'm locked in by the shield. It is time, ladies and gents. It is time to fight Mithrix, the king of nothing. Seems like the Risk of Rain final boss got a downgrade from being called a Bulwark of the Weak. Mithrix moves very quickly and his hammer attacks can do a lot of damage. And it can also bypass the game's hidden one-shot protection mechanic, because my understanding is that one-shot protection in the game can only trigger off of one source at a time, but not necessarily on the same, but not necessarily multiple sources of damage at the same frame. And my Beetle Guard did teleport up here, which is a huge relief, because now it can properly act as my shield. And I'm here using Tangling Growth to... And yeah, Mithrix took damage from falling, which I found hilarious live. I'm using Tangling Growth to basically keep Mithrix at a safe distance while I proceed to nuke it. And even though I have 19 armor-piercing rounds, Mithrix isn't taking that much percentage damage. That's fine, because it can still do a ton of damage to it with Seed Barrage and my Directive Inject. I can keep Mithrix still with Tangling Growth. Anyway, stage 2 spawns in a bunch of lunar chimeras, including wisps, which I hate, golems, which are annoying but can be dangerous. So I think to try and engage that lunar chimera wisp, but I can't hit it for some reason when it's that far away, so I think I have to wait for it to just sort of get closer to range. So I end up taking out its cousin here. Then the golem ends up... Did that golem spawn? At the time I thought it just sort of spawned in, which to me emphasized that I needed to kill the wisps quickly and the golems even faster. That turns into a bit of a joke, because 19 armor piercing rounds massively increases the damage, and then that damage is being doubled due to guaranteed critical strikes at this point. So I have no issue nuking and destroying the lunar chimeras. And then it's time for stage 3. Mithrix returns. And it's the same tactic as before in the fight, where I'm using Tangling Growth to slow him down. And I'm using Directive Inject to basically slow him down, reduce armor, reduce damage. Don't know why I was obsessed with getting myself up into the sky like that with burst jumping. But eventually I end up just sort of... I'm also listening to my own live commentary whilst doing post commentary. And this attack, I think this attack can also hit you for a ton of damage. But there are ways of being able to avoid that attack, which is preferable to face tanking that damage. And I notice also that there's a Lunar Chimera Golem down there, which further motivates me to not necessarily hang on the ground for any longer than I need to. I can't aim down enough to be able to hit Mithrix if he's directly below me. But thankfully I can just sort of prioritize Mithrix, because if I defeat Mithrix in the third stage of the battle, then the additional Lunar Chimera Golems will just despawn. And yeah, Mithrix has his own ranged attack, that ranged attack is preferable for him to use because it does way less damage. But anyway, we get another case of the glowing lunar fire pillars can do damage if they hit you. And here I'm opting to basically kite Mithrix into submission. And eventually, yep, I do manage to get Mithrix low on health, and he does a huge hammer attack that misses tremendously. And you might be thinking it's all over at this point, but no, it's not. Mithrix takes your items. He then proceeds to buff himself with those items. Which means that right there is a beetle golem that spawned from my own queen's gland. You can get your items back by damaging Mithrix, but at this point I'm just sort of prioritizing slowing down Mithrix as much as I possibly can with Tangling Growth. Because he is walking around pretty quickly actually, due to having all of my go-tos. Now I get back my Bustling Fungus. There I get my Rejuvenation Pack, which means I can finally get my health. And I'm not sure why Mithrix isn't just running up to me and trying to murder me, but I think maybe his AI's a little bugged out because there's multiple valid targets he could be going after. And I'm just sort of keeping him isolated from where I am with Tangling Growth whilst nuking him. I'm not doing as much damage as I used to be doing because he took all 19 of my armor-piercing rounds. Yeah, all 19 of them, just simply gone for this stage of the boss fight, which makes it take a little bit longer than I would have liked. But I think that's a reasonable thing to do. And I get my armor-piercing rounds back and my harvest dives, and I just sort of nuke him into non-existence. So, and don't go do something stupid like cause the moon's internal detonator to you person. Yeah, I'm sort of low on health as well, so I think to stay and still just get my health back with Bustling Fungus and my 2 Rejuvenation Packs, whilst the shuttle comes in to pick us up. And I ended up deciding to just first get myself to the shuttle as fast as humanly possible. Fast as I can. I don't think there's an alternate ending for the game. I don't think there's like, it would be cool to have an alternate ending where you could opt to stabilize the moon in a core or something, whatever is causing the detonation, but that's for the game designers to consider if they want to do such a thing. The shuttle does end up spawning in with a pair of TC-280 prototypes, which they can be useful. But also constantly spawning in Void Reavers as well as Golems and Wisps. And there... Yes! 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 Yeah, I was kind of ecstatic that I won the game there. Because I didn't think I would. For the longest period of time. But yeah, my quick thoughts on the Mithrix boss fight. That, whilst I think the first stage is a fair test of a player's skill with character, I feel like at the fourth stage of the fight tests how well the player can fight their own build. And that can be rather cool, but at the same time it does need a little bit of a nerf. Because one-shot protection doesn't quite proc correctly, and that then also means that if you're using something like a Reynolds or Kajaro's band final boss fight, Mithrix only has to hit you once, and one-shot protection will be bypassed because the game considers the attack which triggered Runald's band and Runald's band itself to be two separate sources of damage, and one-shot protection only protects you from one source of damage at a time, assuming that it protects you at all. But yeah. Woo! Risk of Rain 2, everyone. Rex. On Monsoon with the command artifact. Game even gives us recognition for getting this far. That's all pretty awesome. And this music in the game is fantastic too. Mithrix is kind of a giant difficulty spike. It definitely needs some fine-tuning. So, thank you all very, very much for watching this hour and 15 minutes of just carnage and mayhem. For beating the game on Monsoon difficulty, we get the Lunar Item Purity, and for just beating the game on any difficulty, you can unlock the Captain.